Tonight's Spotlight, the lawyer behind a controversial court case. Jeffrey Epstein's long history of sex abuse accusations. Back in the headlines, of course, after the financier was recently charged with allegedly running a child sex trafficking ring. His lawyer in one of the earliest cases involving similar allegations was Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Dershowitz, and he joins us now in tonight's Spotlight. Professor Dershowitz, we thank you so much for joining us. The nature of the crimes Jeffrey Epstein is accused of has led to quite a bit of backlash, as you know, and criticism against you, to which you are now saying, because I did my job well, I've now become a target. So for you, the question is, fair or not, do you understand the backlash?
Well, of course I understand the backlash. I understood it when I represented O.J. Simpson. I understood it during the McCarthy period, but it's just wrong. It's just wrong. Every defendant is entitled to have a lawyer make the best possible case and get the best possible result. When I began to represent Jeffrey Epstein, the allegations were a handful of young women, some of them over 18, some of them just under 18, who gave him massages. They were erotic massages, to be sure. But the full extent of the crimes didn't become obvious until much, much later. And that's why the current case is pending against him. I am not his lawyer in the current case, but I would have been his lawyer. I don't represent anybody twice. I have a rule about that. But I don't draw distinctions based on what crime a person is charged with. I represent people accused of murder. I represent people accused of all kinds of crimes. I did that when I represented refuseniks in the Soviet Union. I did it when I represented Nelson Mandela in South Africa, along with Irwin Cutler. I've done it throughout my career, and I'm going to continue to do it as long as the good Lord gives me strength to defend people accused of crime. And I'll be criticized for it. That's been part of the history. When I defend people, particularly when I do a good job and get them off or get them good deals, I get very, very much criticized for that.
Professor, listen, obviously I'm not going to ask you to breach attorney-client privilege in any way, shape, or form, nor would you do it. But based on the new charges against Epstein, do you regret, as you said, being good at your job?
Well, I only regret having represented Epstein because as the result of doing my job well, I've been falsely accused of complicity with Epstein by two women, one of whom admitted recently that she invented stories falsely accusing Hillary Clinton of sex tapes, falsely accusing Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, but Richard Branson. And the other woman has falsely accused and invented stories about Tipper Gore and Al Gore and Bill Clinton and dozens of other people. So, obviously everybody knows I've been falsely accused, but it comes with the job. When you do a good job as a criminal defense lawyer, you're going to be falsely accused.
Professor.
When I represented O.J. Simpson, people wished me that my children would be murdered and killed. That goes along with the job. Look, I remember being in Israel when lawyers were representing Demjanjuk and when lawyers were representing Eichmann. It's the job of the lawyer to represent the most despised, the most unpopular, and even guilty people. We usually don't know whether they're guilty or not until the case is over, but that's part of our job, and I'm proud to do it. I get my inspiration from Abraham defending the sinners of Saddam, from John Adams defending the Boston Massacre defendants, from Abraham Lincoln defending many people who were despised and hated. That's the job of a defense lawyer, and if you don't want to live in a system with defense lawyers, well, go to Russia, go to Iran, go to other countries in the world. But in Israel and the United States, lawyers defend people who are guilty and innocent alike. Yeah.
Professor, apologies, but listen, you just mentioned the allegations against you. You've been accused of sexual assault, sexual misconduct by two of Epstein's alleged victims. Why would these accusers lie about it?
Oh, very simple. Because they've lied all their lives. They lie for money. And this was a plot. This was part of an extortion plot to get $1 billion from Leslie Wexner. The plot was very simple. Accuse Alan Dershowitz in public. These are two women I never met, never heard of them, never met, out of the blue. I've had sex with one woman since I met Jeffrey Epstein, my wife. I've never touched anybody else inappropriately. They lied, and we have tapes on this. We have an admission by her own lawyer that she was wrong, simply wrong. We have a tape recording by her best friend saying that she didn't want to accuse me, but her lawyers pressured her to do it to get $1 billion from Leslie Wexner. The plot was very simple. Accuse Dershowitz in public and then go to Leslie Wexner in private and say, if you don't want to have happen to you what happened to Dershowitz, there are ways of resolving this. It's called a shakedown. And we don't know whether or not Leslie Wexner paid, but we do know that they shook him down and they tried to get him to pay based on what happened to me. We don't know whether it was true or false against Leslie Wexner. We know it was false against me because we have all the evidence. I have all my travel records proving I couldn't have been in any of the places that she claims to have met me, and her own lawyer admitted it on a tape recording. So, look, I'm not worried about myself. I've asked for an FBI investigation of me and of the women. I will be completely cleared. Everybody knows that I never met these people. These are serial liars who've made up stories in the past. The question is what will happen at this point to Jeffrey Epstein. But you should never confuse a lawyer with his client. Lawyer does the lawyer's job, and clients sometimes are innocent and sometimes are guilty. That's for the courts to determine.
Professor, very quickly, what do you expect will come of Jeffrey Epstein now? Obviously, he was on suicide watch. He's in jail. But what do you think is going to happen now?
Well, I think it's a hard case for the government. They not only have to prove what he did, they have to prove that there was an interstate connection. Remember, we have a system where most trials are in the state courts. Only special cases are federal. And that's why we were able to make the original deal for a state court prosecution. The same thing may happen here. We don't know whether there'll be enough for a federal prosecution. But we do know that some of the women were probably victimized, that's no excuse, however, for making up stories. And some of the victims, if they have no credibility in accusing me and others, they accuse so many people, government leaders, famous people, academics, politicians.
Is there a question in your mind, Professor, is there a question in your mind looking at this particular case of Mr. Epstein's guilt or innocence?
Well, guilt depends on the law. There's great questions about whether he committed a federal crime. A federal crime requires that he transported women in interstate commerce who were under the age of 18, or that he used the federal interstate wires or interstate phone calls. So there is an issue about whether he committed a federal crime, which is what he has been charged with. In my case, there is no issue. The stories are fake. The stories are false. Everybody will know that when certain sealed materials come out now, which are smoking guns, and have confessions, essentially, by the women that they made up the whole story and made up stories about lots and lots of other people. So
Professor
Allen, clear me completely, but Jeffrey Epstein, he's going to have to stand trial.
Professor Alan Dershowitz, we thank you so much for your time, as always.
Thank you.